In June 2011, the Swedish Ocean X team recorded a strange circular-looking sonar target on the floor of the northern Baltic Sea. That is the confirmed starting point. Not a recovered spacecraft. Not a proven temple. A sonar image, taken during a treasure hunting expedition, showing a shape that looked so unnatural that the internet immediately tried to turn the seafloor into a crime scene. The first evidence paved this. The mystery is real, but the identity is not. The sonar target existed. The artificial structure claim is disputed. The UFO claim is speculation. And the rational explanation may be scarier than the legend, because it shows how quickly one blurry image can become a machine for manufacturing certainty. The reported site sits in the northern Baltic region, between Sweden and Finland, in cold water shaped by ice, sediment, low visibility, and a long history of ships vanishing into mud and darkness. Ocean X was not there to find aliens. The team was known for underwater salvage and treasure hunting. They were searching for wreck-related targets when the sonar return appeared. That matters because the discovery did not begin as archaeology. It began as a search pattern. A boat moved across the water. Sonar swept the bottom. A dark return appeared on a screen. From that moment, every later claim depended on interpretation. Is a circular-looking return a circular object? Is a shadow a wall? Is a track on sonar a runway, a drag mark, or just another seafloor feature aligned by currents, ice, and geology? The evidence board has to start with the map, because without geography, the image becomes whatever the viewer wants it to be. Sonar is powerful, but it is not a magic camera. It sends sound, records echoes, and turns those echoes into a picture that depends on angle, distance, instrument quality, calibration, bottom texture, and processing. That is why the Baltic Sea Anomaly became famous and fragile at the same time. The image was dramatic enough to attract attention, but indistinct enough to support almost any story. Confirmed claim: Ocean X reported an unusual sonar return in 2011. Disputed claim: the return shows an artificial construction. Interpretive claim: the shape looked circular and deliberate to many viewers. Those three labels are not cosmetic. They are the difference between investigation and mythology. Once the labels disappear, the evidence starts wearing a costume. The costume, in this case, was a submerged UFO, a secret base, a lost city, or an ancient machine hiding under the Baltic mud. The story exploded because the image had the perfect viral geometry. It looked round. It looked isolated. It seemed to have a long mark beside it. And once tabloids and blogs compared it to a crashed flying saucer or the Millennium Falcon, the visual metaphor did most of the work. This is one of the most important clues in the whole case. People were not reacting only to the sonar, they were reacting to the outline placed around it by storytelling. The same blurry return could be framed as a rock outcrop, a glacial feature, a wreck site, a sonar artifact, or a doorway into alien history. The facts did not change. The frame changed. And the frame told viewers what to see before they had time to ask whether the picture could support that much weight. The most repeated number in the Baltic Sea Anomaly story is about 60 meters. That is the approximate diameter often attached to the circular-looking target. On a thumbnail, 60 meters feels huge. It sounds like a structure, a hangar, a buried vessel, something too large to dismiss. But scale alone does not prove intention. Confirmed. Reports describe a large, unusual sonar target. Reported: Ocean X and media accounts describe geometric features, walls, stairs, holes, and possible interference with equipment. Disputed: those reports establish a built object. Interpretive: the same features may be natural forms, image artifacts, or ambiguous dive observations under difficult conditions. The danger is that a list of strange details can sound like a list of proof. But in a real investigation, each detail needs its own source, its own context, and its own confidence level. The follow-up dives did not end the mystery, partly because underwater evidence is hard to collect cleanly. Visibility can be poor. Currents and sediment can distort what divers see. A rock sample without precise context is weaker than a mapped sample taken directly from a known layer of the formation. That is why the sample question is so important. If material comes from nearby loose stones, it can tell us about the seafloor, but not necessarily the structure. If material comes from the object itself, with clear location data and repeatable documentation, it becomes much stronger. Public reports connected the site to ordinary geological materials such as granite, basalt, sandstone, and other glacially transported rocks. That does not make the story vanish. It moves the question from alien technology to geology, and geology in this region has a very old, very violent memory. The Baltic Basin was shaped by ice. Not metaphorical ice. Continental ice sheets, heavy enough to grind rock, drag boulders, carve grooves, leave moraines, and scatter strange deposits across the seafloor. This is where the rational explanation becomes more unsettling than the UFO story. If the anomaly is natural, it may be a fossil of forces so large that they make human engineering look delicate. Glaciers do not design with blueprints, but they can produce lines, ridges, mounds, scars, and dumped rock that look organized when sonar catches them from one angle. Experts cited in skeptical responses have pointed toward natural possibilities: rock outcrop, glacial deposit, moraine-like forms, or seafloor features created by regional geology. That is not as flashy as a spacecraft. But it is older, heavier, and probably more honest. Nature makes geometry all the time. Basalt can fracture into columns. Sandstone can break along bedding planes. Ice can align sediment. Erosion can expose edges. Sonar can exaggerate contrast. And the human brain is built to find patterns before it finds uncertainty. That pattern instinct is useful on land. It helps us spot paths, tools, faces, shelter, and danger. Underwater, on a noisy sonar image, it can become a trap. A circular outline becomes a disk. A ridge becomes a wall. A long feature becomes a runway. A missing explanation becomes a hidden civilization. This does not mean witnesses are foolish. It means perception is doing exactly what perception does, completing incomplete information. The mystery is not just on the bottom of the Baltic Sea, it is also in the gap between signal and story. So what would actually move the Baltic Sea anomaly from disputed claim to strong evidence? First, high-resolution multi-beam sonar from repeat surveys, not one famous image. Second, photogrammetry or mapped video showing the entire shape in context. Third, samples taken from clearly documented points on the formation, not just loose material nearby. Fourth, tool marks, construction patterns, fasteners, ceramics, metal, datable artifacts, or repeated features that do not fit the local geology. Fifth, independent experts able to inspect the raw data. That checklist sounds demanding because it is. But that is how a mystery survives without becoming a rumor. The more extraordinary the claim, the more boring the paperwork has to become. And for now, the artificial structure case does not publicly meet that standard. The rational explanation is scarier because it takes away the comforting shape of a story. A UFO story has characters. A lost civilization story has builders. A secret base story has planners. But a glacial seafloor has no intention at all. It says the planet can create forms that look meaningful without meaning anything. It says a single image can outrun the evidence. It says our hunger for hidden design can be stronger than our patience for slow investigation. That is uncomfortable. Because if one sonar return can become a world-famous object, how many other mysteries are built the same way? Not from lies, necessarily. From fragments. From shadows. From a real anomaly, surrounded by human certainty arriving too early. So what is the Baltic Sea anomaly? The safest evidence-based answer is this. It is a real, reported sonar target from 2011 with an unusual appearance. It is not confirmed as a spacecraft, a temple, a city, or a built machine. The most plausible public explanations point toward natural geology, glacial deposits, sonar limits, and interpretation. That answer may feel smaller than the legend, but it is not empty. It leaves us with a better mystery. Not, what alien object is under the Baltic, but, how much of what we call mystery is created in the moment when evidence is real, but our explanation arrives before the proof. That is why this case belongs in the Atlas. Not because it proves a hidden machine, but because it exposes one. The machine in us that turns a shape into a story. If you were reviewing the Baltic Sea anomaly evidence, what would convince you it was built? A repeat sonar map, a tool mark, a dated artifact? Or would the geology already be enough? Tell me your proof standard in the comments. And stay with Mystery Atlas TV for the next case where the map is real. The legend is loud, and the evidence has to fight for air.